Riley Bennett was supposed to be writing her thesis. Instead, she was 3 hours deep into a Reddit rabbit hole at 2 in the morning, still in her pajamas with an empty coffee mug beside her laptop. This was her life now, a graduate student in linguistics who spent more time procrastinating than actually studying languages. She clicked through another forum post about obscure mobile games when someone mentioned an app called Universal Communion. The description was weird. Really weird. Experience communication beyond barriers, it said, with a bunch of comments arguing whether it was an art project or some kind of experimental social platform. The screenshots showed symbols that seemed to shimmer and move, like they were alive. Riley's finger hovered over the download button. Her roommate Amber had gone home for the week, so nobody was around to judge her terrible decisions. She pressed it. The installation took forever. Her phone screen flickered with color she didn't think phones could even display. When it finally opened, the interface looked like nothing she'd ever seen. The symbols weren't from any alphabet she recognized, and she'd studied plenty of them. They seemed to shift when she wasn't looking directly at them, flowing like water. A message appeared in English, though the font kept changing slightly. Welcome, Riley Bennett. Would you like to begin? Okay, that's creepy, she muttered. The app knew her name, probably pulled it from her phone settings. Still creepy though. She tapped yes. What followed was strange. Not scary strange, just odd. The app asked questions through puzzles and riddles. Some were logic problems, others were about how she'd handle weird social situations. One asked her to describe colors to someone who'd never seen them. Another presented a moral dilemma about saving one person or 5, but then asked why she chose what she chose, and if her reasoning made sense, and what if the one person had information that could save 100 more later. Riley found herself actually engaged. This wasn't like those personality quizzes that tell you which type of bread you are. These questions felt important somehow. Deep. They made her think about how she thought. If you could communicate only through rhythm, how would you express loneliness? One question asked. She spent 10 minutes on that one, tapping out patterns on her desk, trying to capture the feeling of being alone in a crowded room. The app seemed to listen, somehow. It responded with a rhythm back that felt like understanding. Hours passed. Riley didn't notice. She answered every question honestly, showcasing her weirdest thoughts and unconventional solutions. When the app asked how she'd solve a conflict between two groups who literally couldn't understand each other's languages, she suggested music and food. Everyone gets hungry, everyone likes a good beat, she typed. Start there. The app seemed pleased with that answer, if an app could be pleased. A warm glow pulsed across her screen. Around 4 in the morning, Riley started getting tired. Her eyes were heavy, and she'd gone through what felt like 100 questions. Just when she thought about closing the app, a final message appeared. The symbols arranged themselves into something almost ceremonial-looking, formal and ancient. Compatibility assessment complete, it read, and this time the English was perfect, crisp. Exceptional candidacy confirmed. Cognitive flexibility, 99.7th percentile across all samples. Creative problem-solving, unprecedented range. Emotional intelligence, remarkable integration with logical frameworks. You have been selected. Selected for what? Riley said out loud to her empty apartment. The app didn't answer. Instead, it displayed a countdown timer, 8 hours, 23 minutes, 14 seconds. Under it, just one line, prepare for contact. Riley laughed nervously. This was probably some alternate reality game, right? One of those things where they send you on a scavenger hunt around the city. Except she hadn't signed up for anything like that. And the questions had been too specific, too personal. She tried to close the app. It wouldn't close. She tried to delete it. The icon wouldn't budge. Her phone wouldn't even turn off. Okay, not cool, she said, now fully awake and a little bit freaked out. This is some creepy tech support nightmare. But the countdown kept ticking down. 8 hours, 22 minutes, 48 seconds. Riley stared at her phone for a long moment, then at her laptop screen still showing that Reddit post. Experience communication beyond barriers, the description had said. 37 comments, most calling it weird or fake. One comment at the bottom just said, it's real. Good luck. That comment was 3 minutes old. Riley's hands started shaking. She set her phone down on the coffee table and backed away from it like it might explode. The countdown continued its march toward 0, glowing softly in her dark apartment. Whatever she just signed up for, she had a feeling her boring grad student life was about to get a lot more complicated. She didn't sleep that night. Just watched the timer count down and wondered what the hell contact actually meant. Riley must have dozed off around 6 in the morning, sitting upright on her couch with her phone still glowing that ominous countdown. When she jerked awake, the first thing she heard was helicopters. Lots of them. She stumbled to her window and pulled back the curtain. Her brain couldn't process what she was seeing. The entire street was empty. Cars abandoned in driveways, doors left open, nobody walking their dogs or heading to work. Yellow police tape stretched across every intersection she could see. "What the hell?" she whispered, pressing her face against the glass. Then she looked up. The thing hovering above her apartment complex wasn't a helicopter. It wasn't a plane. It wasn't anything that should exist. The ship, because what else could you call it, was massive, maybe the size of a football field. It looked like someone had carved it from a single piece of crystal, all sharp angles and smooth surfaces that caught the morning light and split it into colors Riley didn't have names for. Her phone buzzed. The countdown had hit 0. In its place, a single word pulsed, "outside." Riley's hands were shaking so badly she could barely pull on her jeans over her pajama pants. She grabbed a hoodie, shoved her feet into sneakers without tying them, and ran for the door. Her legs felt like they were made of water. The hallway was empty. So was the stairwell. When she pushed through the front door of her building, she stopped dead. Her quiet suburban street had turned into a military zone. Hums blocked every corner. Soldiers in full gear stood behind barriers, weapons pointed at nothing and everything. News vans with satellite dishes lined the outer perimeter, cameras trained on her building. And standing in her building's parking lot, right in front of her beaten-up Honda Civic, was a man in a suit. Not a military uniform. An actual tailored suit that looked like it cost more than her entire education. "Riley Bennett," he said. It wasn't a question. "Who's asking?" Riley tried to sound brave. Her voice cracked. "My name is Ambassador Cole Garrett. I represent the Celestial Empire." He gestured upward at the impossible ship. "We need to talk." About the app. Riley's mouth was so dry she could barely speak. About what the app really was. Garrett pulled out a tablet. At least it looked like a tablet, though it was too thin and the screen showed depth like a hologram. "Ms. Bennett, I'm going to tell you something that's going to sound insane. I need you to stay calm. There's a crystal spaceship above my house and the military has evacuated my entire neighborhood. I'm way past calm." Garrett almost smiled. "Fair point. All right. That app you downloaded wasn't made by humans. It was created by the Celestial Empire as a distributed intelligence test, seeded across thousands of worlds simultaneously. We're looking for someone very specific. Someone with unprecedented cognitive flexibility, creative problem-solving abilities, and emotional intelligence that can bridge the gap between pure logic and intuitive understanding." Riley stared at him. "You're aliens." "Some of us. I'm human, actually. From Earth. Recruited 20 years ago." He swiped through his tablet. "The Empire has existed for over 10,000 years, spanning 4 to 7 galaxies. But there's a problem. Their Emperor, the being who holds their civilization together, is dying. Not physically. Mentally. He's a consciousness made of crystallized energy, and has been thinking in pure abstraction for so long that he's lost touch with biological reality. The Empire is fracturing because nobody can connect his logic to actual lived experience. And this involves me how?" But Riley already knew. That sinking feeling in her stomach told her exactly where this was going. The Empire needs a consort. Someone who can interface between the Emperor's consciousness and the billions of biological species in his domain. Someone who thinks differently than any advanced AI or crystallized intelligence ever could. Garrett turned the tablet toward her. On the screen, her test results scrolled past in alien symbols that somehow she could almost read. "You scored higher than any candidate in the history of this program. Any species. Any world. You're not just exceptional for a human, Riley. You're exceptional, period. You want me to be space married to an alien emperor?" Riley laughed, but it came out hysterical. "Not married. It's not romantic. Think of it more like his translator. His bridge to reality. His problem solver for situations that pure logic can't handle." Garrett paused. "The Empire is offering you a position of incredible power. You'd be making decisions that affect trillions of lives. You'd have access to technology and knowledge beyond anything Earth has dreamed of. You'd be one of the most important beings in the known universe. And if I say no? Then we leave. The ship disappears. You go back to your thesis. But the Emperor will continue deteriorating, and the empire will eventually collapse. When that happens, the power vacuum will trigger wars across half the universe. Garrett's expression was serious now. No pressure, but you're kind of the only hope for galactic stability. Riley sat down hard on the curb. This was insane. This couldn't be real. But the ship was real. The soldiers were real. The abandoned streets were real. And somewhere in her gut, she knew Garrett was telling the truth. "How long do I have to decide?" she asked quietly. 24 hours. The Emperor himself wants to meet you first. See if you're compatible. Garrett offered his hand to help her up. "Riley, I know this is overwhelming. But that app didn't just test your intelligence. It tested your character. Your empathy. Your ability to see problems from angles nobody else considers. That's not something you can fake. You earned this." Riley looked up at the crystal ship, then at her apartment building, then at the whole impossible scene around her. Yesterday her biggest problem was an overdue thesis. Today she was apparently the galaxy's last hope. "This is completely crazy," she said. "Completely," Garrett agreed. "Okay. Let's meet this Emperor." The inside of the ship was nothing like Riley expected. She'd seen enough sci-fi movies to picture sterile white corridors and blinking control panels. Instead, it looked like someone had built a cathedral out of light. The walls weren't solid, they shifted and flowed like northern lights frozen in crystal. She could see through them to vast chambers filled with beings that definitely weren't human. Garrett led her through hallways that seemed to rearrange themselves as they walked. "Don't try to memorize the route," he advised. "The ship responds to intention. It's semi-conscious." Cool. Cool. Walking through a living spaceship. Totally normal Tuesday. Riley was babbling now, a nervous habit she'd never been able to break. They entered a massive circular room where dozens of aliens stood around a holographic display the size of a swimming pool. Some looked vaguely humanoid. Others were just floating geometric shapes that pulsed with color. One appeared to be made entirely of singing crystals that chimed when it moved. "The human candidate," one of them announced. Its voice sounded like wind chimes and grinding metal at the same time. "She's so small," another observed. "This one had 6 arms and what might have been 3 heads." "Size isn't the relevant factor," Garrett said firmly. "Shall we begin the trials?" Riley raised her hand like she was in class. Excuse me. What trials exactly?" The holographic display flickered to life, showing what looked like 2 planets connected by trade routes. "This is your first scenario," an alien explained, gesturing with appendages Riley couldn't quite focus on. 2 species, the Kelvar and the Thrim, have been in a trade dispute for 300 years. They cannot agree on fair exchange rates for resources. Our best economists have proposed 4 to 7 solutions. All rejected by both parties. You have 1 hour to review the data and propose a solution. They pulled up screens full of charts, graphs, and economic models that made Riley's eyes cross. She'd taken exactly 1 economics course in college and barely passed. The aliens were watching her expectantly, probably waiting for her to fail. Riley studied the displays for 10 minutes, getting more confused by the second. Then she noticed something. Wait. These 2 species have never actually met in person, have they? All negotiations have been through digital intermediaries. Correct, the alien confirmed. Physical meeting is unnecessary for economic exchange. But have they tried it? Like, actually sitting down together? Riley scrolled through the data. Look at this. Every rejected proposal has a note about cultural misunderstanding or intent unclear. They're not fighting about math. They're fighting because they don't trust each other. The aliens murmured among themselves in sounds Riley couldn't identify. "My solution is simple," Riley continued, gaining confidence. "Make them have dinner together. Both species eat, right? Food is universal. Get their leaders in the same room, share a meal, let them actually talk as people, or beings, whatever, instead of as data points. You can't negotiate in good faith with someone you've never met." Silence. Then one of the geometric aliens began rotating rapidly, which Garrett whispered meant it was laughing. "Dinner," it repeated. 300 years of economic modeling, and the human suggests dinner. "It won't work," another alien said dismissively. "Too simple." Actually, a smaller alien spoke up, checking its device. "I'm reading the Thrim cultural database now. Shared meals are their highest form of trust building. And the Kelvar have a similar tradition. Nobody ever cross-referenced the cultural data with the economic dispute because they are considered separate domains." "Try it," Riley shrugged. Worst case, they still hate each other but you've got good food. The aliens consulted in rapid clicks and whistles. Finally, implementing now. Next scenario. For the next 6 hours, they threw problems at Riley that had stumped the Empire's best minds for decades or even centuries. A war between two hive minds that couldn't understand individual consciousness. Riley suggested they each send a single drone to live alone for a week, experience what isolation felt like. It worked. The hive minds developed empathy they'd never had before. A species suffering existential dread after achieving perfect technological advancement and having nothing left to strive for. Riley's solution: have you tried art? Like, just making stuff for no reason except it's pretty? The aliens thought she was joking. She wasn't. Within weeks, that species started a cultural renaissance that spread across their entire sector. An economic crisis that had lasted 400 years, where money had become so abstracted through derivatives and quantum trading that nobody understood the actual value of anything anymore. Riley applied game theory from her undergrad course and suggested they just start over with a simpler system. Sometimes you've overcomplicated things so badly that the only solution is to reboot. After each solution, the aliens became quieter, less dismissive. They'd stopped murmuring about how primitive humans were and started actually listening. Finally, the room went dark except for a single point of light in the center. It grew, expanding into a form that hurt Riley's eyes to look at directly. Pure consciousness made visible, like staring into a galaxy compressed into the shape of something almost human. "You are the Emperor," Riley whispered. "I am." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "I have watched you solve in hours what my advisors could not solve in centuries. You do not think like us. Your solutions are imperfect, inefficient. And yet they work." "Because people aren't efficient," Riley said, surprised by her own boldness. "Life isn't a math problem. Sometimes the best answer is the one that just feels right." The Emperor's form shifted, like he was considering something he'd never considered before. "I have spent 3,000 years optimizing, calculating, pursuing perfection. And in doing so, I have forgotten what it means to simply be." "Yeah," Riley said softly. "I think you need someone who remembers that." "Indeed," the Emperor agreed. "Riley Bennett. Will you teach me to be imperfect?" Riley stood in front of the most powerful being in the known universe and said the one word nobody expected: "Okay." The Emperor's form rippled with what might have been surprise. The alien advisors erupted into chattering sounds. But, Riley held up one finger: "I've got conditions. Non-negotiable ones." Garrett looked like he might have a heart attack. "Riley, you don't negotiate with." "Let her speak," the Emperor commanded, and the room fell silent. Riley took a deep breath. "First, no brain implants. I saw those things in the medical bay on my way here. You're not putting chips in my head to make me think faster or connect to some neural network or whatever. My brain stays exactly as messy and human as it is right now." "But the optimization would increase your processing speed by," an advisor began. "I don't want to be optimized," Riley interrupted. "That's the whole point, isn't it? You brought me here because I think differently. If you optimize me, I'll just think like you. And you've already got plenty of people who think like you. It's not working." The Emperor was quiet for a long moment. "Continue." "Second, I'm not wearing whatever that formal court outfit is. I saw the pictures. I'll dress professionally, but I'm not squeezing into something that looks like a chandelier had a baby with a straitjacket." One of the geometric aliens made a sound that was definitely a laugh this time. "Third, and this is the big one, I do things my way. If you want human thinking, you get human methods. That means sometimes we're going to make decisions based on gut feelings. Hunches. What just feels right, even if the math says something else. And you have to trust me on that." The advisors exploded into protests. "Unscientific. Illogical. This violates every protocol." The Emperor raised a hand, or the equivalent of one, and silence returned. "You wish to introduce chaos into order." "I wish to introduce balance," Riley corrected. "You've got all the logic in the universe. What you're missing is the other stuff. Intuition. Instinct. The weird human ability to look at incomplete information and still somehow know the right answer. You can't calculate that. You just have to feel it." "And you believe this will help my empire?" "I think your empire is suffocating under its own perfection," Riley said honestly. "Everyone's so busy being optimal that nobody's actually living anymore. Yeah, my way is messier. But messy doesn't mean wrong." The Emperor dimmed, then brightened, as if breathing. I accept your terms. Riley's first official act as Imperial consort nearly caused a diplomatic incident. She walked into a crucial strategy meeting between 5 different species arguing over resource allocation and said, "Okay, everybody stop. We're taking a break. We cannot pause in the middle of coffee break," Riley announced. "Or tea. Or whatever liquid you people drink. We've been at this for 6 hours and everyone's getting cranky. 10 minutes. Go stretch, get a snack, and come back when your brain doesn't feel like mush." The concept of a coffee break didn't exist in Imperial protocol. Meetings ran until logical conclusions were reached. Efficiency be damned if anyone's brain stopped working 3 hours in. The advisors looked scandalized. But Riley made it happen. She actually found coffee, real earth coffee, somehow, and set up a little station in the corner of the meeting room. When everyone returned, something had shifted. The tension was gone. People, beings, whatever, actually talked to each other instead of at each other. The resource problem got solved in 20 minutes. Word spread fast. The human consort did things differently. Riley started instituting what she called coffee talks. Instead of formal diplomatic sessions that took weeks, she'd invite representatives from conflicting parties to casual conversations. No agendas. No rigid protocols. Just talking. Venting. Really. She'd learned that half the time, people weren't even fighting about what they claimed to be fighting about. They just needed someone to listen. A centuries-old grudge between 2 species got resolved when Riley made them both complain about their respective problems for an hour. Turned out they had the same exact issue with a third party nobody had thought to blame. They ended up allies instead of enemies. The Empire's efficiency metrics dropped. The advisors panicked. But citizen satisfaction scores did something they'd never done before. They went up. Way up. "People are reporting feeling heard," Garrett explained to Riley over actual coffee in what had become her unofficial office. A cozy room she decorated with plants from Earth and comfortable chairs instead of the Empire's standard floating meditation pods. "It's unprecedented. People like being heard," Riley said simply. "Wild concept, I know." The Emperor visited her there sometimes, his consciousness compressing down to something almost comfortable in size. He'd watch her work with what she swore was fascination. "You make decisions based on incomplete data," he observed once. "Yep. And you are frequently correct." "Yep. How?" Riley thought about it. Pattern recognition, maybe? Humans evolved to make quick decisions with limited information because waiting for perfect data meant being eaten by a tiger. We got really good at educated guessing. And sometimes a guess based on experience is better than a calculation based on insufficient variables. "You are teaching me that perfection is not always optimal." "I'm teaching you that perfection is boring," Riley grinned. "And also maybe impossible. The fun is in the trying." The Emperor dimmed thoughtfully. For the first time in millennia, he was learning. Actually learning, not just calculating. 6 months after Riley became the strangest diplomat in galactic history, the Empire looked completely different. And it was kind of her fault. She'd started small with the coffee breaks. Then came the suggestion box, an actual physical box where anyone could drop anonymous notes about problems they saw. The advisors thought it was primitive. Riley thought they were overthinking everything, as usual. Within a month, that box generated solutions to problems nobody even knew existed because people were too intimidated to speak up before. But the thing that really changed everything was art. Riley had been walking through one of the Empire's core worlds when she noticed something disturbing. Every building was perfectly designed. Every street laid out with mathematical precision. Everything optimized for maximum efficiency. And it was completely soulless. No graffiti, no random gardens, no weird statues that didn't serve a purpose. Nothing human. Nothing alive. "Don't you people have hobbies?" she'd asked one of the local administrators. "Hobbies?" The alien, a species that looked like walking prisms, tilted its head. "Activities without productive output." "Yeah. Things you do just because they are fun. Painting. Music. Building model ships. Whatever. That would be inefficient." Riley had gone straight to the Emperor. "Your people are dying inside. They need to create things. Make stuff that serves no purpose except being beautiful or interesting or just personally satisfying." The Emperor had been skeptical, but he'd learned to trust Riley's hunches. He issued an imperial decree: every citizen was encouraged to pursue one non-optimal activity of their choosing. The results were spectacular. A species of mathematical beings started creating fractal sculptures. A race of telepaths formed a poetry collective. The singing crystals Riley had met on day one formed a band, an actual band, and their first concert was attended by 3 billion beings across 40 planets. Art galleries popped up on worlds that had never had them. Music filled spaces that used to be silent except for the hum of efficiency. The Empire wasn't just functioning anymore. It was thriving. Riley sat in her office, still decorated with earth plants that she lovingly watered every morning, reading reports on her tablet when Garrett knocked on the open door. "Got a minute?" he asked. "Always. What's up?" "Earth wants in." Garrett pulled up a holographic display showing her home planet. "After your success, the Empire approached Earth's governments with an offer. Technology sharing, cultural exchange, protection from external threats. In return, Earth becomes a protectorate and provides, well, more people like you." Riley's heart jumped. "They're recruiting humans? 20 of them so far. Different specialties. We've got Tyler, he's a former therapist who's now counseling entire species through existential crises. Beth was a social worker, she's redesigning the Empire's welfare systems. Kevin was a high school teacher, and has completely revolutionized how the Empire approaches education. Turns out humans are really good at the messy people stuff that pure logic can't handle." "We're becoming the Empire's life coaches," Riley laughed. "More like its conscience," Garrett corrected. "The Empire had optimized everything except what makes life worth living. You gave that back to them." That evening, Riley met with the Emperor in what had become their regular spot, a quiet observation deck overlooking a nebula that shifted colors like a slow-motion sunset. The Emperor had learned to make his form smaller now, less overwhelming. More conversational. "I have been thinking," he said, which was probably the understatement of the millennium. "Dangerous activity," Riley teased. "About why your species succeeded where others did not. I have access to millions of intelligent species. Many with greater technological advancement than Earth. Some with telepathic abilities or quantum consciousness. Yet it was humanity that provided what we needed." "And what's your theory?" Riley asked, sipping her coffee, real Earth coffee now, since trade routes had opened up. "You evolved through struggle," the Emperor said slowly. "Not just survival struggle, but social complexity. You had to navigate emotions, build trust, read intentions, cooperate with beings who might betray you. Your intelligence developed not just to understand the universe, but to understand each other. That is what we lacked." Riley watched the nebula swirl, thinking about everything that had happened. 6 months ago she'd been a broke grad student worried about her thesis. Now she was helping run a galactic empire. And somehow, impossibly, it was working. "You know what's funny?" she said. "Humans always dreamed about finding aliens. We imagined all the amazing technology and knowledge you'd have. And you did have that. But what you needed from us wasn't our tech or our science. You needed us to teach you how to be less perfect. Imperfection as a virtue," the Emperor mused. "I am still learning this concept." "That's okay. Learning is kind of the point." Riley finished her coffee and set down the mug. "You asked me once if I'd teach you to be imperfect. I think maybe I've been teaching you something else. How to be alive. Really alive, not just existing. Making mistakes, trying new things, doing stuff just because it feels right even when it doesn't make logical sense. That's what makes life worth living." The Emperor's form pulsed with something that looked almost like contentment. "The galaxy is better for humanity's chaos." Riley grinned. "Well, we're just getting started. Wait until I introduce you to reality TV. Your brain's really going to melt then." She was joking. Mostly. But as she looked out at the stars, Riley realized something profound. Humanity hadn't been welcomed to the galaxy as students or subjects. They'd been welcomed as teachers. Earth's greatest export wasn't technology or resources. It was something simpler and more valuable, the messy, imperfect, beautiful art of being human. And the universe, it turned out, desperately needed that human touch.